What's up, and welcome back to the Dad Tax Podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and here we're talking about fatherhood, about being the best dad that we can. Sometimes I'm going to have conversations with my kids, like you saw on episode 1. Other times, like today, we're going to have brief episodes where I break down either a favorite scripture or a saying or something I've learned, answering your questions, etc. It's going to be all about dads and how we can be the best dads and how. Again, I don't feel like I'm an expert at hardly anything, and I'm definitely not an expert or perfect at being a dad, but I know enough that I feel like I can talk to you and talk with you and have these conversations with you about being better each day. Some things I'm striving for, some things I've learned and have implemented and gotten better at on a day-to-day basis. So with that being said, guys, I appreciate the support up to this point. It's his brand new podcast. Please subscribe, follow, whatever it is on the platform that you're on. You can leave comments now on Spotify, which is interesting and pretty cool. I love seeing those. And last but not least, you can go over and leave a review, which I appreciate way more than you know. So thank you for that. I answered some questions last week. There's still a couple more that I'd love to get into in the following week. But for today, I want to go over a scripture with you guys that really rings true to me. And before we get into that scripture, I do want to remind you that if you're in the market for any gear related items or anything like these supplements right here, meat sticks, protein bars, snacks for on the go, training on how you can be better as far as being healthier, all of that with Phorm as well, and gear related items through BlackOvis, Canvas Cutter, and also Dark Energy and many other groups down below. Go and check out the partners of the show, and definitely want to get you guys the best pricing possible so you can take your kids out on adventures. You can live the healthiest lifestyle possible so that you can live longer and enjoy the time with your kids and eventually your grandkids as they continue to grow. So go and check those out. You'll be supporting us here at the show, but also getting the best price possible for you as you go out and make these purchases. All right, now let's get into this, guys. So today I'm reading it off here off my phone. So it's Ephesians 6:4. If you have your scriptures with you, you can open that up. This is out of the King James Version of the Bible. It says, "Fathers, provoke your children not to wrath, or provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord." So provoke not your children to wrath. I love hearing that because I need that reminder. I still need that reminder, even after being a dad for over 10 years and absolutely loving not every moment of it, honestly. And most of the times when it doesn't go the way that I would hope, it usually has something to do with me and something that I've done wrong. And I'm not great at this in the moment necessarily, but afterwards I like to reflect on maybe how I could have done better, how I could have been more patient, how I could have encouraged my son or daughter. Usually it's my youngest son to not be angry. And a lot of the times I've found, and it's funny because something that I have started implementing is taking a breath before I react. When something's happening, unless it's some life or death situation, they're bleeding out, they're super injured, whatever, you can spare a moment. And if my son, I find out, has done something wrong, or if I get an email from a teacher from one of my kids, or a phone call, or whatever it may be, a nasty comment's been said from one sibling to another, etc. Honestly, for me, taking a breath, and it's funny because my son has now started doing this as well, but sitting there and going, pausing for a second, and then reacting is a lot better than just reacting. Because if you sit there and you just react, I'm telling you, it's not going to go well. Most of the time, it does not go well. There's a time to react, which again is in those emergency moments, etc. But when it comes to maybe your son comes up to you and says he did this or this wrong, maybe there's some argument, there was something happening. Well, I'll just think of a scenario here in a minute, and I'll share it with you guys. But working on not being angry is a big deal, and it's usually got to do with reactive moments. Most of us don't come home from work, or when the kids get home from school, if you work from home, most of us don't sit there and stew on how we can be angry at our children. But more often than not, we do end up either snapping or having a moment where we are not our best selves with our children. So again, taking that deep breath, and then if you have messed up and you have either argued, yelled, snapped at, whatever, your child, make sure you show them that it's okay to apologize and to swallow your pride and to be better. That's something that's a big deal for me. That, again, I recognize I'm not perfect. It's not an excuse. But when I do have the moments where I didn't react the right way, or I caused anger or frustration or further argument or yelling, I pause and whatever it is that I'm doing at that moment, and I'll go and apologize to that child and let them know, hey, I was in the wrong. This is why I was so frustrated. What can we do in the future to do better on both of our ends? And this is what I've thought of doing in the future when this situation arises again. And that seems to work really well. One, you're teaching your kids that it's not necessarily okay to become angry, but it is okay to swallow your pride and to go and apologize if you do make the mistake of being angry or lashing out or whatever it may be. For me, that's a huge deal because more than anything, I want to be the best example for my children, more than anything in this world. I also want them to grow up and be productive members of society, to learn how to not necessarily control their emotions, but to be in control in the moment. And to understand that there's a time for anger, there's a time for sadness, there's a time for fear, and how to overcome that fear. And that's what I want to teach them more than anything. Not that because I said so, or the frustration and that dad's okay to get frustrated and he's owed that right of being frustrated. None of that is true. And so I'll just give an example. There's a time where I just got fed up, honestly, with the arguing and the small little backbiting and frustrations that were being caused by our youngest son. And he's very much when he gets something set in his head, it's got to be done that way. And he'll question anyone, no matter who they are, unless he knows them as an expert in said field. Well, I got really frustrated and I finally told him, you know what, just go get your PJs on and just go to bed. And it was probably half an hour, 45 minutes early for bedtime, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But the way that I sent him down there was not okay. I yelled at him and just got really frustrated and didn't want to hear him out, didn't want to hear his side. I just said, just stop talking and go downstairs and go to bed, brush your teeth, go downstairs, go to bed. So sitting there for a minute, I could hear him. He was very frustrated. He was kind of doing the growling and like screaming into his pillow. And he was very frustrated with the situation as well. And so I kind of let that simmer down for a minute. And then I went downstairs and I said, I went to him and said, look, I'm really sorry that I yelled at you. I should not have snapped. This is what was frustrating for me in that situation. And here's how I could have handled that particular thing a little bit better. And he said, oh, it's okay. And I said, hold on, stop right there. It's never okay to do that. It's never okay to let your frustrations and your stresses in other areas of life, whether it be work or money or physical fitness, etc., to boil over into being a dad. I said, so no, it's not okay, but you can accept my apology, which I appreciate, but you don't necessarily have to say it's okay, because I also want to teach him that it's not okay for someone to yell and to get frustrated. So, having those conversations with your kid is huge. And the rest of that scripture there, I'm going to finish reading that again there. So the rest of the scripture was equally as important, because it not only says not what to do, but it also says what to do. Let's take a look here. Okay, so he says, bring them up in nurture and admonition of the Lord. So when I think of nurture and admonition of the Lord, the way that I think of that, a prime example, and this is an extreme example, but a prime example is when Jesus was talking to the woman who was a prostitute, and everyone else wanted to throw stones. Everyone else was angry. Everyone else was, oh, she deserves this and this and this because the letter of the law says blah, blah, blah. And he sat there and he did kind of his own version of taking a breath. He drew in the sand listening to what everyone had to say, and more importantly, listening to what the Spirit and his Father in heaven was saying that he should do as he's contemplating everything, all the different angles. And he says, if everyone remembers, and again, I'm summarizing this, but basically, he who is without sin cast the first stone, meaning if you are perfect, you've never sinned in your life in any way, go ahead, throw the first stone. And everyone walked away. So that's his way. And then he turned around, spoke with the lady for a bit, and said, now go and don't do that again. He didn't beat her. He didn't persecute her. He didn't sit there and berate her for what she had done. She knew she was in the wrong. And most people do. Most kids do as well when they're in the wrong. So you don't need to beat them down with your words, or even physically, especially don't do that. But you don't need to beat your children down with your words. And so raising them in nurture and admonition doesn't mean baby them, doesn't mean give them whatever they want, but teaching them the way that they should go and what happens if they do make a mistake. That's the way that we need to be as fathers. So I challenge you out there listening to go and do that this week. Find a way that you can be better in not getting your children to wrath, and also how you are better at nurturing and admonishing in the way of the Lord with patience and love and kindness, not babying, not going down that route, but in the way that gets your point across in a stern way without having to beat them down with your words and in a teaching manner. So I'd love to hear about that. If you're on Spotify, drop a comment on maybe a story that you would like to share. You can always email me at RedBeardOutdoors@gmail.com, and you can drop a comment in the YouTube channel as well, which I'd appreciate. All of that being said, guys, there you go. That's episode 3, I think, of the Dad Tax podcast, and I've got more coming down the pipeline. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And guys, girls, probably mostly guys that are listening to this, forever remember that nothing great in life is free. Nothing great in life is free. That's so true. So remember that. Share your stories with me. I look forward to hearing them. Have a great rest of your day, and get after it.